Okay. Just we say the British Shalom just separate Rachmim to Kahal Yisrael, and as we know, as we mentioned, the only the Bnei Eretz Yisrael are called Kahal, and they need the Rachel Shemayim, and the British should help us and help ourselves with the army and with a lot of Shmaya, and we should be zeiche to see Yeshuas with their chomos. As far as let's go back here. B'nei Omru in the mitzvah of Leisiskeidu, the Rambam has, and the truth is, I must be frank with you, I was playing mental ping pong about this many times, going back and forth, and frankly, I'm still completely confused, but I think I'm closer, because I just couldn't. It was just very difficult to read the words, and let's before we get to the problems, let's just see. V'nei omru shebechlal lav zeh. So it's very important. It's very clear, according to the Rambam, that those things that he's about to mention are included in this lav. Okay. V'omru shebechlal lav zeh gam kein ohazhora mechiluke bote dine ho'ir b'minhagom v'chiluf hakvutzim, whatever that means. I have no clue. And Kapach says mipilug hadibra umachlekes harab. Okay. So I would assume, okay, if this is the proper translation, I would assume this is the proper translation. There is an influence of Mishnah Torah, because the Ram does talk about chiluke minhagim in Perek Yud Beis Halacha Yudalad. Okay, and what it seems is Ibn Tibur puts this in the text of the Rambam. Kapach, however, says mipilug hadibra umachlekes harabim. So pilug hadibra is there should be united voice, which is a very important thing, an amazing thing. Okay, I think also, not mistaken, the mitzvah from Melech, it talks about that there should be that the king is the sole voice of Bnei Israel, or machlekes harabim. So we're talking about machlekes, and that's okay. The Rambam in Mishnah Torah seems to say that he talks about minhagim. Here, 1 second. Oops. And he doesn't mention Isur. There's the Zohar, Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yudalid. Ubechlal asho zo shelo yu shnei botei dinim be'ir achas ze noeg b'minhag v'ze noeg b'minhag acher. So there's a question of minhagim. Okay, so I just, before we get started, one should ask themselves the question whether the Rambam's opinion is that that Isurim are also a problem. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Because the Gemara says in Yevomis, Yudalim and Aleph, Umandi Omo Osu, Karin Kan Lois Iskaidu, Lois Asagulus Agulus, or Mabaye, Kaminus is Gaidu, to go and stay, but they din and be Rachas. Hello, Monk, the Beshame, hello, Monk, is Beshiro. I'll stay, but they din and be stay Ayoris, less Lombo. Omer Rovo, or Beshama, you Beshiro, to stay, but they din Be'ir Achas Domu, Eloma Rovo, Kaminus is going Bezdin, Be'ir Achas. Okay? So the problem over here is it seems to be a priori that the Ram is passing like Abaye. Because the Ram Mishnah Torah talks about Shnei Botei Dirim B'Achas. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Avodas HaMelech claims that the Machlokes Abaye and Rava is about Isurim. And the Ram is not mentioning it, the Ram is passing something else. Okay, whatever that means, it is clear in Rambam that the problem applies to not only to minig but to Yisurim. And that's a Shuvas Rambam in Siman Reish Samach Beis. Aval Amida Ze Achochom Asimich Al Minig Outside He Toz Gemura She'afilu B'Dvorim Asher Toli Bohem Dvar Iso Omalnu Al Yishana Oda B'Bnei HaMachlokes Kol Shekain B'ma She'ein Toli Boy Iso B'Shum Ponim V'Yova B'Zeh Mishum Lois Izgoylu Loisase Agudas Agudas. Now here, so l'chei, what it means is the Ram is saying that even by minhagim, there's loisis going to do. But course, excuse me, so sorry, what's it? No, see, there's a problem here. So I'm saying the opposite. See, he says, see, the Ram is the fisha afilu b'dvorim asher toli b'hem dvar isa, and maybe you should say that because of machlokes you can't violate it isa because of loisis goylu. No, loisis goylu says everyone has to work the same. Man ayishana odin b'nei machlokes kol shekain b'ma she'ein toli b'isa b'shum ponim v'ova b'zeh mishum loisis goylu. So l'cheira, there's a problem here that is very clear from the Rambam that there's loisis goylu by Isurim, but it's odd that he fails to mention Mishnah Torah, because you should always mention the bigger chiddush in Mishnah Torah, and the bigger chiddush is Isurim. Right? That l'chei is a problem. Okay, now this Gemara in Yevomis. So the question is, why does Rambam paskin the way he does? So there are those that claim Then the Tziv quotes this, and it's a Shaylas Tshuvas Ol Tam. Simin Kuf Ayin. He doesn't quote where it is, but it's in Simin Kuf Ayin. Okay. There is a Tosefta, Loisis Goidu, Loisasu Agudus Agudus. Elaheyu Kulchem Aguda Achas. See, it's an amazing thing. It's not only that you shouldn't be, it's almost like a positive thing. Not only you shouldn't be two, but you should be one. So he says, once you say like that, so in every year, that's what Abaye says, there should be one voice. But according to Rav, it comes out going Bezdin. Be achas plag moing kidu be Shammai, plag moing be kivu be Silo. So l'cheira, it's not kul chamaguda achas. So that's what he claims, that the Sifri is a raya, that the Ram is machriya like Abaye. That's what he says. V'sifri, oh, teres kohanim, or Yerushalmi, mochichin kain, afal pishi, shitas agemora, lo ra'ato, agemora hochi, poisek hefech shitas agemora. That is what he claims. Okay, whether it's true or not, but the Ram here is not mentioning, it's a side point, because it's only according to Ibn Tibim, but according to Kapach, Tuliga Dibra or Machligas Harab. So the important thing is Machligas Harab. Although, and we pointed out last week, I think, that according to the Bahag, there's not Bechlal another lav, but they're two separate lav. There's a lav of Srita and a lav of Leishis Goydadu. And it could be that it's Agudus Agudis. That's what Leishis Goydadu means, according to. Okay. But the Rambam says no. Now here is an important thing now. Avagufi dekra inehu k'moi shebiaru. V'yomu leisasu chabura al ameis. V'zehu k'mo drash. Okay. Now let me just explain to you the problem. Zeh k'mo drash. But it's under Leishis Goydadu. And then he says, V'chein omrom, this Gemara in Sanhedrin on Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, and the Gemara says, Kol HaMachzik, B'machlikis, is over B'leis Malav, Shenemar lo yeh k'korach v'ados. So l'chei has nothing to do with us. Gam, but he says, now here's the important words. He says, Gam came outside Hadrash. So, whether there's Cain Drash and Tzad Drash are the same thing, but he says it's the Drash, and he says Gam Cain. What does it mean, V'chein Gam Cain? V'chein Omrom is Gam Cain. So what does it mean, Gam Cain? So what it means, Gam Cain, is this is also subsumed under Leishis Goydadu. So the question is, if Drash is serious, so it should be under the law of Lo Yeh K'korach V'adosai. And if it's not serious, you can understand it could be under this law, but then the whole discussion here is not serious. So it's like, there's no way out of this a priori. And this is what I was, this is a problem. But he says, why is it a drash? Omnam gufa dekra hula hafchid. And we'll see about that in Mitzvah later. Ulefi ma shebi'arach chomim in Shorish Ches is what? Kishbarach chomim Shorish Ches. Hine hu shlilo loy ashor. Ki heim biru she'inyan ze amaymu hu shakel yisal magid zot shlilo. Okay, good. We'll come back. That's a secondary thing. Okay, so you have this problem over here. The Ram seems to equate koirach and agudas, and both are drash, but both are b'chal the aschola over here. So let's go slowly. Let's understand the word drash. So it's tzara drash, derech drash. But l'cheira you should be mechalik between agudas and koirach. Now, let's start slowly. The word drash in Rambam, you'll excuse me, I'm going to do something which I never like to do. See, you usually say something is something or not something. You don't say something is more or less, because that's very fuzzy-wuzzy, okay? But I'm going to do that because the Rambam does it. And basically, what comes out is that the drash is not an equivalent, is less than Yud Gimel Midah Shato in the drash Sbehem. And the Ram says it very clearly in Shorish Beis. Ukva higia bohem asichlos al yosek kosher mizeh. It's more difficult than this. Because counting Yud Gimel Midas in Minyan Mitzvahs, no. But counting drash in Minyan Mitzvahs is impossible. V'zeh shehen k'shemotzu drash, which is in the original Arabic. All this the original Judeo-Arabic is the word drash. You might say al drash, but that's a hey yediyah. But we're really talking about drash. V'zeh shehen k'shemotzu drash b'posik yischayiv min adrash ahu lasses pula min apula. Pulois or lahachik inyan min anyanim. Either it's to do something or to abstain from something, enjoy from something. V'heim kulam v'lei safik d'rabon. Now, the Rabbanon, I'm not sure. He might not see. Ram used the word the Rabbanon in Shorish Beis, if you recall, as there's a human input into it, the Rabbanon input into it. So therefore, it's not Minyan Mitzvahs. And this bli safek is the Rabbanon. It's not given from Moshe Misina. Yimnu, and they Yimnu oisam b'chal mitzvahs. So all he basically says, because he calls Yud Gimel Midas also the Rabbanon in Shorish Beis, that drash is not equivalent to Yud Gimel Midas. But what it is, we don't know. He also says, which we understand as a drash, that the limud should call Eva ve'eva asi bi mitzvah is a drash. In the Akdomo, the Minyan Mitzvah, he writes the following: Omu kain al derech hadrash ke'yois mitzvah say mispar ho'ivorim kloima kol Eva ve'eva call Aver, the Aver, Oimer loy, I say be mitzvah. Vayos, mitzvahs, lois say mitzvah yom, Kloima, is the Gimei Ashana, Kloima, kol yom v'yom omer, loy le'odem al tasa bi'aveir. So this, that the mitzvahs are saying, the Evolim are saying, the days are saying, that's a drash. So then, it's an amazing thing. Even though it's a drash, maybe it has something to do with Mina Mitzvahs, which you would have said is impossible. But the Ram does it in Shirish Beis also. Because he says that Biko Cholim and Nicho Avelim is a drash. There's a drash, and that Gemara in Bab Metzia and Metzias. But you can be masik misfora that they are bechlal the afterlech kamoicha. That's what he does in Shirish Beis. He says the drash, but the mice is bechlal the afterlech kamoicha. So maybe huadin kan here also that there's a drash of loik kolch vadosai, and it's not me'in of the kraw, because the kraw, it can't be, because the kraw is the chashlila. But misvara, you have to include in the leiseskaydu. And therefore, the Ram's careful and doesn't say that the problem, and that's what the Gemara says, that's what he's quoting, is not the problem of chilik ala kuhuna, which he's going to talk about later, but the problem is lahachzik machlekes. Nothing to do with kahuna. There's a problem machlekes. So since the issue is an issue of machlekes, the natural address is leisis kaidadu. And then the Rambam includes everything. In Perek Yud Beis, he has a very strange phrase. In Yud Beis of Hilchos Avodah Zarah and Chukas Hagoyim, ubechlal azho zeh shelo yiyu shnei botei dinim be'ir achas zeh noye k'minig zeh v'zeh noye k'minig acher shedov zeh goyrem lemachlekes gedolah shenema leisis goydel leisasu agudas agudas. So let me ask you a question. What are we learning out from leisis goydel? That you shouldn't have shnei botei dinim be'ir achas zeh noye k'minig zeh zeh noye k'minig zeh, or no, you shouldn't have a machlekes. And that's agudas agudas. But the isa of shnei botei dinim be'ir achas is because it's geirem lemachlekes. Let's read it again. Ubechlal azhor zeh shelo yiyu shnei botei dinim be'ir achas zeh noye k'minig zeh v'zeh noye k'minig acher shedov zeh geirem lemachlekes gedolah shenema loisis goydel loisas agudas agudas. And the isa agudas agudas and isa machlekes. So maybe then he doesn't even have to quote the isa machlekes mishnah Torah, because if there's an isa of goyel machlekes, there's certainly an isa machlekes itself. Here, there's a problem. Because let's go back. He says Now, you see, when he says, V'hine omru, shebechal lav ze gam kein, or ascho michiluke bote dine ho'ir b'minhogom, v'chiluf hakvotzim. V'omru, lois isgeiru, lois asu agudus agudus. Okay? So, is it hainu hach? Is chiluke bote dinim agudus agudus? See, in Mishnah Torah, it's not clear like that at all. That's just wondering. He says, "B'chalav zeh shelo yushnei botedinim zeh shedov zeh goyel machlekes gedola uksiv v'kosav loisis goyel loisis agudus agudus." So that's why I'm just confused. Because if you learn that agudus agudus are the same thing as chiluke botedinim, I'm not sure that's what it says in Mishnah Torah, but if you learn like that, then even though the Ram is equating everything, you have to say that drash in the drash is v'zeh k'moi drash. There's a difference between k'mo drash, which is more serious, than the drash at the end, because there's certainly you can't have it b'chlal loisis goydadu unless you have a category of agudus agudus. So that's the problem over here. In one hand, the Ram equates both of them and says they're both drash, but they're both b'chlal. But the only way you can have a category of agudus agudus is either through this drash, if you interpret chiluke botedinim is the same as agudus agudus, or you take the other approach, which he has in Mishnah Torah, maybe, is this is goyel machlekes, and maybe the ashol is about machlekes. But the problem is, if you have Kapach's interpretation, you also have a problem. You can't do that either. So you have to go, because Kapach says, Mi piluga dibro umachlekes arabim. So you're learning out, and it's nothing to do. He doesn't mention botedinim over here. He mentions botedinim, but the issue is about machlekes. So that's the problem. It's very clear, and that I'll show you something else. You see, I'm just going to read to you from Shiur Shmini. Here is told lo yekach hados v'afal pi shemotzonu lehem lashon acher gemor Sanhedrin v'hu omrom kol hamachzik machlekes oiv b'lo sase shenem lo yekach hados v'zeh al tzad asmachta. I think I quoted that to you last week. Now, I just want to tell you, the word asmachta is very odd, because the proper translation of this is teichachas. It's an admonition. But whatever it is, it's not real. V'lo yeh pashi dekro b'kavona zois. V'ulam or ashol hazeh hu nichlal tachas lav sheni k'mo she'avai v'mekoymo. And where's mekoymo? Is here. So if you recall, if you recall, I mentioned in Shiur Shmini, I thought that there might be a difference between outside hadrash and derech hadrash or kein hadrash, and that's the difference. If it's true, it's true. But I'm just telling you, the oddity is you read the words, there seems to be a complete equation, but there can't be an equation because somehow there has to be a category of agudus. And the only way to do it is agudus is a separate discussion. That might be possible in Ibn Timmons translation, but in Kapach's translation, you can't do it because he actually saying pluga dibro and machlekes. So you're back to where you started. See, on one hand, you're saying that it's they're both a drash, and a drash it can be kilu nogeya b'chlal deraisa, and these two lav because conceptually this is all about machlekes, machzik or machlekes, agudus machlekes shinui min hogam, and it's goyim machlekes in Mishnah Torah. You say that. The only problem is that you have to willy-nilly have a category called machlekes, which is leisasu agudus. And if that's only a drasha, you're back to where you started. And that's where I was holding. In Mishnah Torah, you can can it in a nicer fashion, and you can say that the drasha of or we don't know state that they didn't as a drasha in Mishnah Torah. He says ובכלל הזו שלא יהיו שני בתי דין ביחס, אחד הם ככה ואחד זה נוי כמנהג אחר, שדובר זה גוי למחלוקת גדולה, וכוסו לא יסגוינלו, לא יססו אגודס. So, but the important thing over here, Mishnah Torah, he seems to say, Kilu, it's like a get the deraisa, that you shouldn't do X because it's goyim machlokes gedela, and machlokes gedela is a terrible thing. So you're not allowed to do X. But the question is, what's the drash and what's real? It becomes very confusing because l'cheira a drash, you can't have it a drash like the Mobu B'tzia of a derech hasheyechum b'kocholim nicham avelim, and at the same time make it a category under you can bring it under another category like Vaftalech Moicha, but what we're doing is creating the new category with drash l'cheira is impossible unless you mechalel between the two types of drashas. That was my point, and that was I was trying to meet out. But I don't think every way you read it, it just is. I think it's almost impossible to read. Okay, next. Now let's continue. Ulefi. Omna gufi the call. Hulahafti. It's coming to it's coming to get you scared. Ulefi ma shebiu chachamim. Hine hu shlila lo ashor. And l'chayr, that's one sentence. Omnam gufi the kol hulafti. Ulefi mash and ulefi mash shebiu chachamim is that's the explanation of what lahafchid is. We'll see that it's a shlila lo ashor. Ki heim biaru she'in ze hamaymo hu shakel yisala Magid. Ki mi shiachol kalakuna. Now we're talking about machal akuna. V'yoira alakuna v'mashi ovoi. Min azman, at any time in the future, but not now. Lo yeonesh b'mashe nenash toirach. V'lo yeh onshoy she'iv la'oretz. Ba'oretz. A Sefer, as he has in Shiur Ches also. Lo yeh onshoy kasher diber Hashem b'yad Moshe Loi. Okay. So what's Kesher Diva Hashem B'Yad Moshe Loi? That's Gemara in Sanhedrin. Gortzaloima Atzaras. B'Yomroi. B'Yomroi L'Moshe. B'Yomroi Yis'ala L'Moshe. Hove no Yotcho B'Chekecho. U'Kmo She'Yizboyer. Kmoshis boya in Divrei Hayomim by Uzziah. At Divrei Hayomim Beis, you look there. Beis, Divrei Hayomim Beis, Perek Chavot Pasuk Yutes. Now, I went through this. I don't know if we have to go through it again. If you want, you'll let me know. I can do it again next week if you like. I went through this in Shiur Ches because basically it's the same thing over there to explain this whole discussion about Saras. And that's the Yoinish. But this has nothing to do with the mitzvah. This whole discussion is a side comment to explain what the shlila is, and the real discussion is shlila and Shiur Ches. If you want me to go over it again, in Mitzvah Shem, I'll do it next week if you remind me. Okay, but that's why he says va'oshu el kavonis hamitzvah. Which is the royal Itztara and Cholek Al-Kuna have nothing to do with Mitzvah. And that's why he's coming back to the Mitzvah. And he says, Ve'oiver alav zeh loike. Now, what does it mean, like it? So now the Malchus is the Gedida. Now, I know that from a diuk in Mishnah Torah. He says, Aserit, Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Beis, Aserit, in Avodah Zarah, in Chukas HaGoyim, Aserit Slita Achas, Alameis Loike Shnem V'Ser L'Nefesh Loisik L'Besarchem. And then also there's Malchus for Gedida B'Kli L'Avodah Zarah. And that's the end. Halacha Alameis, Halacha Yud Gimel, Bein Tzot B'Yodai, Bein Tzot B'Kli Loike. L'Avodah Zarah, B'Kli Chayiv, Malchus B'Yodai Pot. Ub'Chala Zozu, shloyu shnei bote dinim beir achas. Ze noy keminig ze, v'ze noy keminig acher. Shadov v'ze goyim machlokes gedoylo v'kosu loisis goyim loisas agulus agulus. See here. It's very interesting. The Rambam, if you look in Halacha Yudbeis, Gimel, we were talking about Malchus. And when he gets to Agudis, he doesn't mention Malchus. So I think the answer is simple. Because you only get Malchus the Gufi the Kor. And Gufi the Kor is about Gedida and Srita. The Achas. But when it comes to Agudis, that's not Gufi the Kor. And therefore, there's no Malchus. So that's the Malchus is for Gedida. But even though you do Gedila Avodah Zorah, might be Kibud Avodah Zorah, but there's no Malchus of Kibud Avodah Zorah. As Ram says in Perigim, Avodah Zorah lo chavov, Hamagape for Avodah Zorah, Menashek lo of a Mechaber and Merabitz for Neo. Mechok Yetzim is a covered or Elu, called Toys Elu, Oive B'lei Sase, Shnema B'lei Sovdem, but don't Elu B'chlal Avodah Hein, V'afa Pikein Elu Loike, Alachas Mehen, Lefi She'enam B'ferish, V'im Hoyiso, Derech Avodaso, V'yechel B'kol Elu, or V'yasol L'ovda Yischayit. Okay. Malchus here is for Loisis Titgodedו, which is Chukas Akum, and therefore the Rambam brings the Machlokes not by Kibud Avodah Zorah, which is when they did the Gedida L'Shem Avodah Zorah, but in Perek Yud Beis Mehilchos Avodah Zorah Chukas Goyim, which is a Chukas Hagoyim. That's what they did for the Avodah Zorah, but it wasn't Avodah, and not in Perek Gimel in Kibud Avodah Zorah. Okay. Now, just an aside, independent of the Ram and the word drash and not drash, it is very clear in the Gemara in Yevomis on Yud Gimel and Beis that the drash, that Loisis Titgodedו and of Gedida and Loisis Titgodedו of Agudis Agudis are both possible interpretation of the pasuk. And if you'd want to have a real drash, l'cheira, the Gemara seems to say that in Yud Gimel Beis that the drasha of Agudis Agudis is real. I'm not sure if that helps you, the Rambam, but you see that what he does is correct. The question is how to read the words here. They're a little difficult. Okay, now let's go on to the next thing. Now, HaMitzvah Ashesh V'Arboim, Ish Yishirnu Mishchoin Be'eretz Mitzrayim L'Olam. Milishkoin Be'eretz Mitzrayim L'Olam. Now, here we're going to have a problem. We'll have to So let's go slowly, one at a time. Now, so a priori le'olam means that it's noeg. Le'olam means any time, and means noeg b'zman hazeh. I'd like you to evaluate this. I'm not sure if there's another possibility. I'm not sure if you use the word le'olam like that. Maybe he means that you need a permanent residence. But I don't know if that's le'olam and not a temporary residence, because the lav is only if this is your home. But I don't think the word le'olam would mean that. And if you think so, let me know. So now, if you assume, as I'm saying over here, see, this will lead to the next topic, really, that the Isa is always, okay, la'olam. You see, let me go back for a second. See, on the other hand, even though the word la'olam might not be mashma like that, I have a problem. Because, you see, what he's doing now is a nusach HaMitzvah. And is there reason to make an editorial comment that this mitzvah is noeg la'olam when he's referring to the nusach HaMitzvah? So you might want to say that he says that that it's a permanent residence. But I don't know. It's a little odd. The whole thing is, whichever way you go is odd. There's no, usually when it's noeg or not noeg, when it's noeg b'zman hazeh, is usually a postscript, and not in the nusach mitzvah. And here he's making part of the nusach mitzvah. So whichever way you have it, something is odd, okay? But whatever it is, the Rambam in Mishnah Torah clearly says that the lav is noeg. And that's in Perek Hey, Halacha Zayin, Mutar Lishkon b'chol ha'olam, chutz me'eretz Mitzrayim, min hayam hagodol v'yoded, and he includes at the end Alexandria, which will come to later. And here also, Ukfar is boy b'gmor sukkah, ki Alexandria, he gam came mechlal ha'yoros, who asur is lishkon, or mekoimos asur is lishkon bohem. Okay? See, here is a problem. Because the Isa l'schatein in Mitzri is not noeg b'zman hazeh. Not noeg now. Why? Because the Ram Nisui Bia in Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Chof Hei, says, Kishe'ola Sancherev, Melech Ashur, Bilbil Kol Umois, V'ilvom Zeh B'zeh, V'higla Moisum M'Mekoimo. ואלו המצרים שבארץ מצרים עתו אנושים אחרים הם. They're not Mitzrim. They happen to live in Mitzrayim, but they're not Mitzrim. And the Ram Mishnah Torah also paskins this idea of that a bilbo or Sancherem bilbo almost applies to not only to Ammoni and Moavi, but to Mitzri. The Ram Pirush Mishnayis in Yodayim, Perek Daled Mishnah Daled, Kivin Shkvan is Balbulu, or Amim, Bisman Sancherev, כפי שמפורסם בספר הנבואה, שהוא העביר את כל העמים לארץ מרוחקת ממנו, נעשו ייחוסי העמים אצלנו בלתי ידועים. The whole yichus, everyone got mixed up. ואין אנו יכולים ללמוד עליהם ממקום עשיהם. You can't learn from who they are from where they are. וידוע כי כל השבעים לשון מותרם לבוא בכל, חוץ מעמון המועיל ומצווה הדיימי. בכלל הוא אצלנו, כל דפורש מיהו בפורש, ולפיכך התירו לבוא בכל מיד. So it applies to Ammon and Moav and to Mitzri. ושים לב, איך לא נמנו רבי גמליאל מלבוא לבית. Now, I would tell you that l'chera, it's very clear that according to the Rambam, Mitzvas, especially in Alexandria, and even more so, that it's noeg bisman there, and it doesn't depend upon the Mitzri people. However, things become a little murky over here because let's continue reading the Rambam. Hishis hirnu mishkain be'eretz Mitzrayim lo'ilom kidei shelo nilmad kfirosam u'shelo nelech b'darcheim hamagudim eitz la'tera. So l'chera, we're talking about a peculiar kfira of the Mitzrim. And that should logically depend upon the Mitzrim being there. That's very odd. Okay. So the question is, so why should we know it today? The Ramban al clearly also says that it depends upon the Anshe Mitzrayim. The Ramban in Perek Yud Zayin Dvorim, Perek Tezayin, V'tam HaMitzvos is מפני שאוי המצרים והכנענים רואים וחתורים להשם מארץ, like סדרים, כמו שאומר, כמייס ארץ מצרים אשר ישבתם בו לא יססו, וכמייס ארץ כנען. וגוימה, והנה רוצה השם שלא יומדו ישראל ממעשיהם, והכריז בכנענים כל נשומו, ולא ישחי כל נשומו. V'yomar lo yeshvu b'artzecho, and they can't live together with you. V'hiz here b'Mitzrayim shlo neshev anachnu b'artzo, and that's the way you keep away from these Mitzrim of Kamei Eretz Mitzrayim. Shlo yuma yisrael mi'maseyim. So the chayra, it should depend upon the Mitzri people. But the Ram clearly says later on here, Minyan HaMitzvos, in Ramban, it's a kasha, we have to know what he holds. But the Ram here, but the problem is, the Gemara says by Alexandria that they were nenash because they went back to Mitzrayim. And Alexandria was after Bilbo of the Umays. So there's another option. You can say, no, we don't paskin Sanhedrin Sancherev Bilbo es Umays, and the emissaries, that's the Yereim. We paskin that Sancherev lo Bilbo Umays, and therefore you can't go back to Mitzrayim. The Yereim in Sefer Yereim Simon Samach Shin Tes in Fus Yoshon Shin Gimel Leisi Sifu Loshu B'derech Siva Boi Shel Yishuv Yisrael Mitzrayim T'chsiv Pas Yishaytim Om Hashem Leisi Sifu Loshu B'derech Hazeh Oid B'chule. Falgaf the Amina Kasha the Amina B'bochais B'perek Tfilas HaShachar Sheitiu Yehu the Ger Amoini Lova B'kol Mitam Shebo Sanchel Viles Oilam Kuloi V'gam Mitzrayim This Babel V'knesayim L'set the Kedushin Omer Rabbi Akiva L'minyamin Ger HaMitzri Toiso Kvabo Sancherev V'bilbles Kol Oilam V'lo HaMitzrim V'makoyim Oyem Yoshvim Ein Lahatir Mitam Zeh Lo Shuv Shari Derech Mitzrayim Nesang V'loi B'Mitzrayim Adov Tolui. So then he says, we pass in Sanchev Bilbo, but it depends on Derech Mitzrayim. Okay, besed. V'yoi V'loi Kaimelon Ki Rabbi Akiva Dioma Mitzrayim Nisbalbel El Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Yeshua Denechleku Alo Meseches Yodayim the San Yehosom Omelei Rabbi Gamliel Af Ger Mitzri Yehei Muto Omelei Rabbi Yeshua LeMitzrayim Nosan lehem akosuv kitzvo dichsim miketz aboim shono akebetz zrayim ino amim asher nofutzu shom yeshuva ad mosom aminu besuka perach olel al anshe Alexandria my time anshu mishum liovu ahaiklo dichsim loisivu lashuv b'derech hazeh oid vahu liacha bilbo shtel sanchev habo. So the Yereim is mochir from this that is mochir from this, very simply, that Sanchev was not Mavabel Mitzrayim when they came back. So the question is, what do we do here? Unless you say here is the opinion like the Yereim. In Mishnah Torah, the Ram does not say that it depends on Tfirosim Shal Mitzvah, and then everything's open. The Ram does paskin that Sanchev is Mavabel the Uma. So the question is, and that varies very big in the Rambam, and they'll pick up Mitzvah Hashem next week in Perek Hemilchus Malachim Halacha Chesed V'Yishiro Eloloshu V'Chulei Lishkoin Bo V'Hi Biyad Goyim. He doesn't say Mitzrayim. Mipnei Shema'aseho of Eretz Mitzrayim. Mekukolim Yosim Mikol Harotzos. Shenema K'maisa Eretz Mitzrayim depends upon Eretz Mitzrayim, not upon the Mitzvah. And that Mitzvah Hashem will discuss much more barichus next week. B'li neder.